as we talked about earlier, it's very early days for this iBuying business. Zillow offers business for Zillow. The numbers haven't quite been as appealing as we would have liked to see so far, but the business hasn't reached scale yet. How have investors reacted to this so far? It has been kind of a battleground stock on some of these issues.
Yeah, for sure. Zillow is certainly turning into this battleground stock. And, there's a lot of smart people on both sides of the bull-bear debate here. Obviously, Zillow's insiders are super bullish. Rich Barton actually came back to be the CEO of Zillow earlier in 2019 after he went away to work on other projects, including founding different companies and working with a lot of VC-backed companies. It's worth noting that he was a significant backer of WeWork. And other than Rich Barton, there's actually been a lot of insider buying activity at Zillow. And the insiders now own more than 15% of the company. So they clearly believe in the prospect of iBuying long term. At the same time, nearly 20% of Zillow's shares are held short. And, quite notably, Steve Eisman, who is famously portrayed in The Big Short, is also short Zillow. And he's done a few interviews where he's described his thesis, and he makes a really interesting argument. He basically says that iBuying is a flawed business and points to the negative unit economics of it. And he thinks that home flipping reminds him of a lot of the risk-taking behavior that he saw in the housing bubble that caused the 2008 financial crisis. And in his mind, real estate is an inherently local market and is really not one that he sees as being conducive to a scale tech platform that other industries might be conducive towards. Zillow's stock price is actually down since the Zillow offers business took off, but the trading has been pretty volatile. And, it seems like investors are really still trying to figure out whether or not they believe in this new business or not.
Yeah, Luis, I think one core question I have here, and maybe this is part of Eisman's case, but is how scalable or what economies of scale do you think come with this iBuying business? So we've talked about, Zillow hasn't reached scale yet. That may be some reason behind why the profitability doesn't drop down. But at the end of the day, at the core, these are buying and selling homes. How scalable do you think this business model is for a company like Zillow?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And, there's certainly some aspects of this Zillow offers business that do scale. So, the tech platform and the software development that underpins it is certainly something that can be done from a centralized location. There's certainly some brand advertising that could happen at a national level. But yeah, at the end of the day, zooming in on the transaction, the housing market is inherently a local market. That being said, I don't think this business has to be. I think it can still work for a company like Zillow, even if it is somewhat regional or local. And that's just simply because even regional housing markets are pretty huge. So if you look at the total U.S. housing market, it's something like 30 plus $30 trillion. And you can look at where population centers are based. You can look at a market like, let's say, Los Angeles, which that metro area has somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% of the U.S. population. And 5% of $30 trillion is several $1 trillion. So if you start thinking about these multi-trillion-dollar markets, even at the local level, you can still make the economics work as long as Zillow finds a way to run its regions efficiently.
So going from there, then, Luis, would you be an investor today, or if not, what would you need to see to kind of overcome that kind of confidence interval to get you there?
Yeah, so I'm pretty torn, and I don't plan on making a long or short decision anytime soon. On the one hand, I wouldn't want to bet against Rich Barton. The guy's founded 3 amazing companies, and he clearly has his pulse on the his finger on the pulse here in terms of the market that he's in. If Zillow is correct about its bet on Zillow offers, I think Zillow could be one of the next mega platforms in the tech industry, in the lines of like an Amazon or a Facebook. The housing market is huge. It's many trillions in total addressable market, and if Zillow can just carve out even a modest niche, it'll definitely accrue a lot of value for shareholders. But at the same time, I look at the economics of Zillow offers today, and the numbers simply don't add up yet. And I also see smart guys like Steve Eisman being really skeptical. And I think Steve Eisman makes some good points. So I'm pretty comfortable watching from the sidelines for now. Um, I would want to have more assurance that Zillow can achieve better unit economics and that there is a path for scalability here. I do believe that Zillow has some competitive advantages when it comes to the iBuying industry in general. Clearly, it has a great platform that could lower its cost of customer acquisition versus some of its competitors. But I'm just not sure yet, because it's doing something that's really bold. It's taking a lot of risk, and there's also ways that this could really backfire for the company. So, in other words, I'm happy waiting and potentially buying Zillow stock at a higher share price, but with more confidence in the business.
Yeah, Luis, I would kind of count myself in that same boat as well. I own Redfin. I really do think that the real estate market is ripe for disruption. It's something that hasn't changed in a significant way over time. However, these are some very aggressive bets being made by a large number of competitors in this space, and I'd really like to see how things play out. It feels like, when you were last on the podcast, we talked about the Virgin Galactic business and how I wanted to see them launch a few rockets safely before I wanted to buy in. I feel a similar way about the Zillow offers business. I want them to scale this safely and see that we can make this work before I really want to rush and buy in. However, if someone wanted to, just take a basket approach and grab Zillow, Redfin, the few folks that are playing in this space, I do expect there's going to be a big tech winner somewhere in the real estate industry. But we'll just have to see which one it ends up being, or if there's going to be a large number of winners. As you said, this is a very, very large market. Luis, one last question I do want to ask you, though, whether or not you want to invest in the stock. Would you ever use this iBuyer service as an individual? Why or why not?
Yeah. So I think the iBuying service for a consumer is great. You can just fill out the survey, see what the iBuyer would be willing to pay for your home, and who knows, the offer could be really, really good. And you could even pit up multiple iBuyers against each other and see which one gives you the best offer, because they're all going to be a little bit different. And at the very least, it gives you an out in case you can't find a traditional buyer for your home. So, clearly this is just another example of where the consumer wins.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the consumer is going to be a winner, whatever ends up happening in real estate.